How is it going, guys? And welcome back to another video on YouTube. Today, we're going to talk about something that is very important for PLO players, which is bankroll management. This is a common question I receive all the time on YouTube, which is how big should my bankroll be before I jump into PLO cash games? Now, in this video, I really want to give a worthy answer to this question because it is so important and substantial. And the reason it's so important is because so many people jump into PLO and they experience something negative, a downswing or a negative swing. Maybe they don't have a win rate yet, but they lose way more than they should, quote unquote, and then they stop because they think they got completely crushed, or the game has a lot more variance than they thought would be possible, or it might be rigged, and then they experience something unexpected and they give up. And I want to avoid that, and I want to make sure that you guys know what's coming, what could be coming in the possibility of a downswing, but also in the possibility of an upswing, so that you don't get overconfident. Now, let me tell you this. The most important thing about bankroll management is to understand that this is a financial decision. A financial decision is highly dependent on your individual life circumstances and your tolerance to risk. So, say, for example, you're someone who is 21 years old and you're at university and you don't need any income because your parents pay everything. That was just me when I was studying. And you don't rely on making money consistently playing poker, and you can take more aggressive shots playing poker. Even if I busted my entire roll while I was studying, it would not have been a massive deal because I didn't really need the money. And so therefore, my risk tolerance was very different. Now, imagine someone who is 40 years old, has 2 kids, is married, and has a mortgage to pay, and is a professional poker player, right? That individual will have, hopefully, a much, much different risk tolerance, and therefore needs to have a much different bankroll management system in comparison to the first guy. And even though they're playing the same game, in this hypothetical example, their decision on what the proper bankroll is, or what bankroll management system they were going to utilize, is completely different. So that's why it's important to understand how variance works first, and then think about how that then applies to your life circumstances, to your risk tolerance, then your goals, and also to your personality overall. So let's start off and talk a little bit about variance calculators. So on primedope.com, which is the website we're on, you can find a free poker variance calculator. And this calculator works in a way where you put in a couple of variables and it simulates different outcomes for those variables, so you get a better understanding of what could happen if the variables would be correct. So the variables in this instance would be your win rate, the standard deviation, and the number of hands. So the standard deviation describes the variance in the game format that you're playing, and it is an estimation. So if you play PLO cash and you play online against the best players in the world, where people know how to bluff, put you into spots, and apply massive amounts of pressure, then your standard deviation, your variance will be bigger, because you're going to be forced to take closer decisions. You can't just give away tiny EV spots. You got to fight for every pot. You got to make hero calls. You have to basically squeeze out every edge, and that's going to increase your variance. If you play PLO cash game in a live game that is, a 1-2 live game with 8 limpers to the flop, variance is going to look very different because your opponents are very passive, they're very predictable, and also your win rate is going to be much higher, but more about that in a moment. But basically, PLO doesn't have one fixed standard deviation or variance. It really depends on the game. You might also find yourself playing short stacked versus 300 or 500 big blind steep. You might find yourself in a 2 blind game versus a straddled game, or a game with bomb pots, right? All those factors will influence the standard deviation or the variance you're exposing yourself to. And so that already shows you that there is a ton of complexity when it comes to understanding variance. So all we're doing here is we're trying to ballpark and estimate what are the possible swings you're going to experience based on an assumed win rate under a certain sample. And those are approximations. Those approximations will help us to wire our brain the right way before we head into something. So what I would recommend is to use standard deviation here. That is going to be recommended between 120 and 160. I would err more on the higher end. So let's say it's 160 for online PLO. I would say for live PLO, it could be much lower because your opponents might never bluff. They don't put you into spots. They play less aggressive. They limp. they check to you, they don't check raise you on the flop as white. Like all these factors are going to impact the variance. Then the second thing is the win rate, right? So what is the win rate? The win rate, it's a very common question. Of course, again, people trying to oversimplify it and say or ask me, what is my achievable win rate in whatever game? PLO 50, PLO 200, PLO 2000, and so on. And the answer is obviously it depends. It depends on how good you are versus the competition and how much Rake detracts or subtracts from that win rate. So Rake is a huge topic. And sometimes when you look at those extremely soft games online where you play low stakes, you might think that your edge is massive, and it is, but that isn't considering the rake that is also in play, right? So the rake can be many multiples as you go down in stakes. So let's say you play PLO 5000 or PLO 2000 referring to the blinds 1020. The rake might be, depends on the side you're playing on, it might be one big blind or even less than that per 100. It might be two big blinds, five big blinds. On some sites, it might even be higher. On the apps, it's going to be even higher. So even on the same stake, you might experience rake differences that are massive. If your rake is one big blind per 100 and your rake is six big blinds per 100, that's a five big blind difference. That could be your entire win rate in a game, right? So even if you play 10-20 in both instances, one guy with the same edge is going to be a break-even player. The other guy is going to be a five big blind winner, which is a massive winner, right? So understanding win rates is a whole different topic, but I do want to touch a little bit on it because it is relevant in order to put the right input in. Consider this. Consider how much the rake is. I would say first of all, you need to understand how much is the rake in big blinds per 100. And you do that by tracking your hands, whether it is on an app or on a international public site like PokerStars or GG or CoinPoker, right? On those sites, you can track your hands and then you can see how much the rake is in big blinds per 100. And the reason you're looking at it in big blinds per 100 is because you're comparing that with your possible win rate, which is also in big blinds per 100. So I would say if your rake that you're paying is going to be 8 big blinds per 100 or lower, after rake back, you're in an okay environment. If you play against a very competent player, you want it to be lower. You want it to have 6, 5, 4 big blinds ideally and below that. So let's say I play in the pool where the rake is going to be 8 big blinds. Now in that game, I do receive, for example, a 33% rake back. Or let's make it simpler. Let's say it's 9 big blinds in rake and I receive 33% rake back. So now I'm going to subtract that from the rake in 6 big blinds per 100. So I'm going to pay 6 big blinds per 100, and I would say, okay, 6 big blinds per 100. If my opponents are weaker players than me, I think I can overcome that and so more in order to actually have a true win rate, right? So that's the first thing. You need to understand how much rake you're paying in big blinds per 100 to evaluate the profitability of the game that you're in. Very, very important. A lot of the big sites, they have attractive rake structures if you are a good player, right? If you understand how to develop an edge and you study the game, they are beatable. However, there are some other sites, for example, app games, that have a wide range of different rake structures, and a lot of them are not beatable or not worthwhile your time. So understand that if you're playing on a site that is more private, then it's more likely that you're in an environment where the rake is very high and potentially unbeatable or not worthwhile your time. So now let's talk about win rate in the context of that. I would say that if you are in a game where the rake is 6 big blinds or less and you have a strong edge over your opponents, you can have an additional win rate of 6 big blinds, even 10 big blinds per 100 in PLO cash. Again, this is assuming you're better than the other regulars, not only better than the fish, but also better than the regulars, and the rake is not, overcharging you. So let's say you could have like 8 big blinds per 100, for example, is a possibility. Now, let me be clear. Most regulars don't have an 8 big blind per 100 win rate. And that is because they are not better than the other regulars. They only make money off the fish and they have to pay the rake. And because most of the players on most of the tables will not be recreational players, especially as you move up in stakes, it is not a profitable strategy to only beat the recreational players and lose a little bit or even break even against the other regulars. Because again, there is a rake, and the rake is going to subtract too much of your winnings. So if you look at the aggregate and you look at all the regulars, so everyone who's putting in high volume and has regish stats, we're not differentiating here between good, medium, and weak regulars, but just everyone together in one pot, right? The win rate of that kind of player type on average is going to be about 0 big blinds across most stakes on most sides. Some sides like GG, for example, the average win rate of all the regulars will be slightly minus EV, like -1, 2 big blinds, but then with the rakeback, slightly plus EV, like about 1 big blind or 2. And on other sides where the rake is a bit friendlier, the average regular will be winning, let's say, 1 big blind, and then after rakeback, maybe 3 big blinds, something along those lines. Now, that includes the mega crushers at the top, and it also includes the slightly losing regulars at the bottom and a bunch of people that are in the middle. Now, our approach and the way I teach in the PLO Mastermind is not to become a mass tabling grinder on minimal win rate. It is to become better than 90% of the regulars on your table, right? That is the goal. And when you do that, you not only enjoy the game a lot more because you're crushing, but also you are lowering your variance. We're going to talk about it in a moment, because your win rate increases. So the goal, especially if you play professionally, should be to have a very high win rate, even if that means that you're sacrificing potentially the stakes that you're playing, or it means you're sacrificing the amount of hands that you can play. In an ideal world, at some point, you're going to scale up all 3 factors. You're going to have a high win rate, you're going to move up in stakes, and you're going to put in the volume. But the thing I would put emphasis on first is to improve your win rate. That is the most important element in order to have longevity in the game and not get crushed by the variance in this game. So that's why improving your game is really the first pillar. And then you should think about, how do I add more tables? Most people do it the other way around. They think they overcome variance by just playing a huge amount of tables. And what they do in reality is that they are destroying the relationship they have with the game. If you play poker in a mindless state and you're grinding hundreds of thousands of hands a year on a multi-table without really thinking about how to really exploit the other regulars, you're going to develop a relationship with the game that is very dull and very boring. And your win rate is going to be almost non-existent. So variance will be high. And that the entire balance of how poker should feel or can feel at the highest level is completely far away. You're just going to feel like a bot that is grinding on low win rate, and you have all these emotional swings because you feel like this guy is crushing me, this guy is crushing me, variance is crushing me, and I need to put in all these hours on the table, which is super dull because I don't really have enough time to think through hands as I'm playing so many tables and there's so many decisions ahead of me. So that's the approach you want to steer away from. You need to focus first on your win rate, and if your win rate is doing really, really well, then you add tables. And then if you maintain the win rate, you're going to increase your bankroll. And you're going to have this confidence to then move up in stakes. And then once you move up, you focus again on the win rate first. And the thing about win rate, which we're going to discover here in a moment, is that you can't really evaluate your win rate always based on what's in the tracker. That is because you need so many hands to have an objective opinion. But by understanding your stats and understanding if you're doing better than your opponents given the stats, you start gauging an understanding of edge in the game even before the win rate converges to the true number, so to speak. So that's the kind of skill set you want to develop down the road. But this is, slightly different topic. So let's focus on the variance. So the win rate I would recommend is 8 big blinds, right? That's where you want to steer towards. And most people are going to be below that even after rakeback, and that's something to work on. Assuming you have an 8 big blind win rate after rakeback and a standard deviation of 160, now we can start putting in a sample. Let's say 100,000 hands. I would probably start with some number that is appropriate for or is normal for you who's watching, of how many hands you put in a month. Let's say it would be 25,000 hands, right? That is a sample that I would say is not for a professional player. A professional player should play, I would say, usually around 50,000 hands a month, potentially more, even when you are not mass tabling. But assuming it's 25,000 hands, we can press the calculate button, and it creates 20 graphs, And those 20 graphs represent what could have happened in those 25,000 hands, assuming the 8 big blind win rate, right? So scrolling a little bit down, you will see now that there's a 21% chance that you're still losing after the sample. So now we know that, okay, well, if I'm starting this journey to play 25,000 hands a month, even if I'm doing really well, I have a strong edge, I studied the game, there's a 20% chance I'm going to come out as a loser by the end of that first month. So again, it's all about educating yourself and understanding what you're heading into. Assuming you're a pro player and you're playing 50,000 hands a month, let's see how that impacts the numbers, right? So now the probability of a loss goes down to 13%. So that's pretty calming, I would say, because it means if you really have a high quality game, on most months of the year, you're going to end up winning every single month. And there are going to be 1 or 2 months per year where you might not win. Now, let's see what happens to the 25,000 hand guy if they don't focus on quality and they have a low win rate, let's say 3 big blinds, right? So remember the 21% loss probability? Now it goes up to 38%, right? So that person is going to experience a lot bigger swings because of the low win rate. He's going to be losing after that first month way more often. And also the amount he's going to be losing, the swings, the range of swings is going to be bigger. So that's why I advocate for a high win rate. And then at some point when you're a pro, you're also increasing volume. And then that way you can withstand variance much better. So here we have 20 graphs, right? And the worst one is the red one. And this guy lost 61 buy-ins. This is out of 20 different graphs. The best one won 140 buy-ins, and all the others are in between, right? So I wouldn't assume that you're going to be the worst, like that's kind of a low probability you're going to be the guy that is dropping 60 buy-ins, but it is a possibility. More likely, you're going to land here somewhere in between. And if you're going to be losing, you're going to be losing probably not 60 buy-ins, but you could be losing 30 buy-ins. You could be losing 40 buy-ins. It is a possibility, even if you're a strong winning player after 1 month. Now over here, we have different samples of downswings. I'm going to adjust the sample to 100,000 hands, which is this. And you can see based on the swings, like for example here, this guy's playing a volume. He's downswing close to 8 buy-ins. This could also be an upswing, downswing 6 buy-ins, 12 buy-ins, right? 12 buy-ins, then one day 18 buy-ins, or in 1 or 2, 3 sessions, 18 buy-ins down, 21 buy-ins down, 23 buy-ins down, right? Those are all realistic possibilities. So now we have an understanding that, well, in this sample of 100,000 hands, which would be 2 months of the professional player, he's going to be losing 18 and 20 buy-ins somewhat frequently. Like it happens quite often, as you can see here. Across the year, it would be 1 million hands, right? So we move this number up right here, and you will see 1.1 million, for example. This is the overall, winning line. And then in between, he's going to have some swings in there where 40 buy-ins is pretty common, right? 30 buy-ins is right there, 40 buy-ins is here, sometimes 60 a possibility across the whole stretch of a year. However, if you look at the big picture, let's say 500,000 hands instead of 1 million hands, 500,000 hands, right? The probability of a loss is non-existent over a year, but you can land quite in a wide range of possible outcomes between 3.5 big blind win rate and 12.5 big blind win rate with a 95% confidence interval. So yes, you're going to be winning for sure, but the amount you're going to be winning can differ quite a bit. So these are just the realities of the game, and you have to prepare yourself to understand, okay, this is what is coming. Now, if you are playing multiple stakes, for example, you say, I'm going to start at 1-2, right? And then if I win and I have a high confidence that I have an edge over the field, I'm going to start moving up in stakes. Now, maybe if you're unlucky, you're going to run into a downswing at 2-4 or 2-5. If you're lucky, you had a harder stretch at 1-2, and suddenly you're upswinging at 2-5, right? That's also a possibility. So as you are moving into different stakes, variance will also increase because you might run good or bad at the wrong stake, so to speak. This happens all the time. So that's why it's important to, keep a cool mind when you move up in stakes, because the money is going to feel like a lot more, but the variance is still going to be the same, if not bigger, because your opponents are more competent. Maybe your win rate is going to go down, or even if not, your standard deviation might go up because your opponents are more aggressive. So now we know that there is a probability of a loss, and we know how to think about it and calculate it. And now you can put in your own sample, right? You can say like, well, I'm only going to give myself a 5 big blind win rate, but I'm going to put in the hours. I'm going to grind that 50,000 hands and really focus what is ahead of me, right? And now you can see, well, it's these graphs. It's a probability of a 24% chance I'm going to be losing in that first sample, right? So I'm ready for that. And how much am I going to be losing? Well, we can definitely like swing 50 buy-ins if I'm unlucky. If I'm really unlucky, it is a possibility. So now back to the question, the initial question, how big should my bankroll be? Well, let's say you have 100 buy-ins and you downswing 40 buy-ins, right? You have a 20 buy-in session, it goes down. And then at some point, another 10. Now you're down 40 buy-ins in a 50K hand sample. Very possible. We know that now. Are you going to keep your calm if you only have 60 buy-ins left? Do you keep playing the stake, or do you have to drop down now? And I would recommend if you only had 100 buy-ins and you drop down to 60 buy-ins, you should definitely move down in stakes. You're overexposed. You are running into the risk of losing your cool and playing much worse and scared because you are getting closer to losing your entire roll. So you have to drop down, right? So what I would recommend is, 100 buy-ins might be fine if you're willing to move down quickly, but especially as a professional or semi-professional player, you need to have more. Let's say you have 200 buy-ins and you drop down 40 buy-ins in a bad stretch. Like, you can stomach that. You still have 160 buy-ins for the stake. You can keep your calm and keep going, pay some bills in the back if that is necessary, right? So think about the fact that you're probably going to go on a stretch where you're going to lose 40 buy-ins, potentially more. If you are a strong winning player, it's probably not happening that often, right? And at the grand scheme of things, if you put in 200,000 hands, which shouldn't take too long for a professional player, you're going to have an 8 big blind win rate, and your probability of a loss is going to be 1%. All right, guys, here's the thing. I wanted to end this video, but then I realized that we do need to really simulate what it feels like to be a poker player. So let the caffeine come in. Shout out to Gorilla Mind, not a sponsor, but I wish. Anyway, here's an exercise that I recommend. All the hardcore guys still watching, by the way, you are really serious about this, because when I produce these YouTube videos, I always feel like the retention rate is so bad, people just can't watch a video to the end. Well, if you're still here, congrats. First of all, you're serious about this freaking poker journey, which is good news, because that's what's required to make it happen. Okay, anyway, let's jump in. This is what you want to do. You want to go to primed up yourself. And now you want to put in your details. I'm gonna use like a random person. I'm gonna say like Tom is. Most people that are watching are not 21, to be honest. They're probably more like 32 or so. But anyway, let's say Tom is 30. Okay, and he wants to start making money at PLO. So where does he start? Right? I would say start PLO 100 if you can. He puts down 10K. 10K is 100 buy-ins. Now, Tom also has another job, so he doesn't rely on the money, but he wants to have a solid bankroll, but he doesn't take it as, he doesn't have to be overrolled in the way that a professional player has to be. So 10K is a good number. And his rule is going to be, hey, look, I'm going to study a lot, obviously PLO Mastermind, PLO Trainer, check that out, learn, study, take it serious. Also, what you need is tracking software, right? And he's also informed about Rake/Rakeback. So he knows all these things. Amazing. This is how I recommend getting after it, right? So this is the plan. Now, this guy, Tom, has a rule for bankroll management. BRM is bankroll management, which is if he goes down to 7,500, he drops to PLO 50, right? So at PLO 50, he would then have 150 big buy-ins, and his confidence would be shattered, but he has 150 big blinds for PLO 50. He can rebuild, right? It's fine. So basically, he has 25 buy-ins, which is very aggressive, and he is hoping he doesn't run bad in the beginning at PLO 100, but it's certainly a possibility in 2 sessions, even in 1 session, in theory, he could lose 25 buy-ins. Now, because he's not really sure if he can withstand the emotional pressure of losing 20 buy-ins in the session, he's going to put a stop limit, right? Or he's going to say, I'm going to put a stop loss. And the stop loss is going to be 6 buy-ins. He's like, look, if I lose 6 buy-ins in 1 session, for me, emotionally, I'm not sure if I'm still focused. I have the confidence, the aggression, and so on that I need. I'm going to quit for the day, right? So quit for the day. So then therefore, he can never lose more than 6 buy-ins a day. And then for him to lose the 25 buy-ins, it's going to take him a while, like 4 big losing days, right? So that's the strategy of bankroll management. That's a practical example. Now what we're going to do is we're going to enter this thing and we're going to say, what is the win rate of Tom? Well, he's not the end boss at PLO 100 yet, but he's studying hard, putting in the hours. He has some rake back. He understands all these things. We're going to give him 5 big blinds after rake back. Now, what happens here in the first session, right? We're going to simulate it 5,000 hands at a time. So 5,000 hands will be basically like he's trying to accumulate his first sample. So the first goal is to grind 50,000 hands, right? 50,000 hands, and then see what happens. He tells himself, I'm not going to move up to PLO 200. Before those 50,000 hands, I want to have the safety of understanding if the whole process that I put together works out well. The way I study, the hours I grind, how I deal with downswings and adversity. He wants to really understand if he is made for PLO 200 before that. He wants to build up that grit. I think this is all good, right? So this is the plan. So this is what you should be doing yourself, adjusted to your life circumstances, your risk profile, like what you want out of the game and so on, right? So this is a practical example. Now, back to this. 5,000 hands, roll the dice, right? So these are 20 different graphs. And now the question is, which graph is Tom's graph? So to determine which graph is Tom's graph, we're going to use the RNG. So those are 20 samples, right? And we're going to say between 1 and 20, which one is it from the top to the bottom, right? So in his first 5K sample, he was graph number 3. So 1, 2, 3. He won 16 buy-ins, 16 or 1,645, 1,645 times 100. Well, that's an easy number, actually. It's not this number, unfortunately, but it's $1,645, right? So we're going to take this up here and say day 1, he makes $1,645. Okay, so that is amazing, right? Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to look at day number 2. So at this point, right, his roll is going to be $11,645. He's feeling pretty good. Day 2 rolls around. We have 20 graphs again, and he rolls the dice. 13 doesn't sound as appealing. So this is 20, 19, one more here, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 74. He won $74. Not too bad, right? So day 2, won $74, right? So the roll is going to be 11,000. Let's do the math here. Oh, let's not do the math, actually. Plus $74. So this is the roll right now. Could use an Excel sheet, but okay. Next day rolls around. We use the RNG, and this time is 18. Terrible day. So this is 20, 19, 18. He loses 15 buy-ins, 1531. All right. So minus 1531. So far, no big deal, right? But if this is yourself, right? If you are Tom, then just realize, okay, what was the day? Actually, the day was impossible because he would have stopped the day, right, at 6 buy-ins, but then he would have lost the next day and the next day. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You cannot lose more than 6 buy-ins, but basically over the stretch of the next 5,000 hands, you had a couple of losing days. So this is probably 3 losing days. So realistically, because this is 5,000 hands and not day 1, so this is sample 1, this is 5,000 hands. This is basically on his journey to 50,000 hands, right? So then we have sample 2, 5,000 hands, and then sample 3, 5,000 hands. We don't have to put in 5,000 hands all the time, but this time he lost. Let's go back. He lost not this, but this. 1531. So 1531. So every sample is 5K hands, and he's basically trying to put down 10 samples. Now, what happened here, right? Let's think about it. These are 5,000 hands, and he's losing 15 buy-ins. So because there's a stop limit at 6 buy-ins, he basically had a session. In the session, he won, lost, down 6 buy-ins, probably quit. The next day he shows up, one loss, or maybe just went straight down 6 buy-ins and lost. And then he quit again. At this point, it's down 12 buy-ins, maybe a little bit more. And the last day he's losing one more time, right? And then he's down 15 buy-ins. So I just want you to put yourself into the shoes of whatever numbers are appropriate for yourself to understand what is going on there, right? So here, after 15,000 hands in total, Tom is now sitting on this number. So he's basically back to even after, this is with Rake back, right? After playing 15,000 hands. And this is a guy that has a 5 big blind win rate. So he's still studying, he's drilling, he's reviewing his stats. He's trying to keep his confidence in table select well. But after 15,000 hands, he is back to square one, basically. This is the reality of profitable poker, right? So once you understand that, you can equip yourself with the right bankroll required. Okay, so now we're going to go into another sample. Boom, RNG, 17. Not lucky here. So this is going to be the worst sample, right? So this is 20, 19, 18, 16, 17, 14. So now he's losing $514. So remember, this is another, sample 4. So these are another 5,000 hands, where at the end of the 5,000 hands, which might take you, if you play, it might take you 5 days or 5 playing days. It might take you 1 day. It depends what your volume is, of course. So he's down another 5 buy-ins, right? So at this point, his roll is even smaller. And you know, what's going on with Tom, right? Because at this point, he's probably thinking to himself, I'm not sure if I have even an edge in the game. I've been playing 20,000 hands and I'm down $350-ish, even though I feel like I'm so much better than everyone else and I put in all these hours, right? This is the reality of poker. This is how it works. Now let's hopefully catch a good run here. So here's the next 5,000 hands. We pick up a 9. Okay, what is a 9? Here we have 1, 2, then we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Unlucky, $544. So basically 5.5 buy-ins. Amazing. Okay, so sample 5, 500, forgot the number, I think 44. Roll at that point. So he's up again 5 buy-ins in those 5,000 hands. Right, he's back over his beginning roll. You know, and this is a 25K hand sample, right? So if you look at your own database and you have a 25K hand sample, it might look, if we look at this for a moment, 25,000 hands, the same guy, you know, you might be up 87 buy-ins. So we could have played this game here where he's currently breaking even 2 buy-ins. He won 2 buy-ins, 25,000 hands in. We could have rolled the dice in a way where he would be up 87 buy-ins, right? So he basically doubled his roll almost, and he would be at almost $19,000. Instead, he is at $10,200. Same guy, same skill set, just ran a little bit differently. So that's the reality of 25,000 hands that you should realize. Now, you will almost never be this guy and almost never be that guy. But at the moment, you can say he's running a little bit bad, right? Because his expectation is basically this, just to give you the EV of his situation. He has 25,000 hands, right? So how much is he winning per hand? He has a 5 big blind win rate, which is going to be $5 at 50 cents a dollar, divided by 100 times 25,000. So he should be up 1,250, but he's only up $218, right? So he's basically 10 buy-ins below EV, so to speak, at this point, 25,000 hands in. So I'm not going to run the entire sample, but this is the exercise. I want you guys to do the same thing for yourself, to project if you have a goal, say it's 50,000 hands or it's a month of playing 25,000 hands, that these are the different outcomes and how you're going to deal with them. What is your strategy going into it? Do you have a certain regimen about improving your game? No matter what happens, I'm going to put in 2 hours studying. My stop loss is 6 buy-ins, 4 buy-ins, 3 buy-ins, whatever it is. And my goal is 50,000 hands and then reevaluate. If I drop too much, I'm going to drop down in stakes. I'm going to keep my head down and then grind the same way, just at a different stake until the downswing has ended and turned the other way around, right? So realize that this is a scenario where he's below EV for 10 buy-ins. It could have easily been that he's up $15,000 or $12,000, or he's at a roll of $13,000. All possible outcomes. It just happens within the small sample. And these are 25,000 hands. If this player really takes on poker seriously, he's going to play in the year maybe 250,000 hands, right? So 250,000 hands is right here. And now we're going to roll a big dice. So we're going to say 250,000 hands. These are all the possible outcomes. Now, obviously, these are only 20 simulated samples. Like if you would simulate 20,000 samples, it's much unlikelier to like run exactly this bad. But let's hope we're not going to RNG at 20. It's a 19. Oh my God. So what happened to him? Well, he is up 36 buy-ins, right? So this was almost the worst possible run ever. And this is an extremely difficult year for Tom, but he is up 36 buy-ins, right? So he would be up $3,600. And his EV in this situation should have been 12,250, right? So in this sample, he EV was 12,250, basically 10 times the 25K hand sample, right? So his EV was this, but he only realized 3,600 in this sample of 250K hands. You know, this is possible. Like, it's a very bad run, but this is basically what he should be equipped for when it comes to emotionally dealing with the game. So you're going to have better years, worse years. You're going to have better 3-month stretches and so on. What is your friend is the win rate. We haven't talked about the win rate, but most likely in those 250,000 hands, Tom hopefully found a way to increase the win rate to 8 big blinds over here, and then that way lower the standard deviation, the probability of a loss, the probability of losing a bunch. Maybe he also learned how to put in the volume and be consistent, and then put in maybe 500,000 hands. Just to show a more optimistic scenario, let's say he goes up here, becomes a professional player, and plays and crushes with 500,000 hands. So now he's never losing, and maybe one of those graphs is his, right? Up 40 buy-ins. Sorry, he's up 400 buy-ins over here, right? So 40,000 big blinds. So if he would stay at this one stake, which he would never do, he would move up in stakes, but then he would be up $40,000, right? $40,000, which is 40,000 big blinds over here. Any of those is basically up $35,000, $40,000, and so on. But most likely what will happen is once he's up $10,000, maybe $20,000 throughout the year, he is going to move up to 1-2, hopefully maintain the win rate, and then put in the volume and go even higher when it comes to his money, the money return, not in big blinds, but in money. So summing this up, simulate what's going to happen to you, how you're going to deal with it, put together a strategy. Don't just blindly go into it and then be surprised by variance or have no plan of what happens when you are getting hit by variance. Have in mind what is going to happen, and most importantly, work on those 3 pillars. Number 1, most important, win rate. Number 2, learn how to put in the volume after you have established a win rate. And number 3, understand the environment you're playing in. Play in environments where you have beatable rake structures, and always aim to be the best regular at your stake, if not one of the best regulars at your stake. So you have a win rate against all the recreational players and most, if not all, of the other regular players. This should be the goal, to maximize your win rate and to make this journey of being a poker player professionally or semi-professionally as enjoyable as possible. With that, we're going to end the video. Hopefully you guys have learned a lot and enjoyed it. This has been JNandez. I'll catch you guys in the next one.